September 25th, 2022, Liverpool. The Labour Party conference. Keir Starmer walks onto a stage dominated by a massive image of Queen Elizabeth II, Union Jacks flanking both sides, and delivers words that would have made his younger self physically sick. The late Queen Elizabeth II was this great country's greatest monarch. The crowd applauds. The media praises his respectful tribute. And everyone forgets that this is the same man who spent years proposing the abolition of the monarchy. The same man named after Keir Hardie, Labour's first leader, and a lifelong Republican who scandalized Parliament with anti-monarchist speeches. The same man who built his legal career on radical left-wing principles that explicitly rejected hereditary power. This wasn't a tribute. This was a performance, a calculated, focus-grouped, poll-tested performance designed to rebrand Labour as the party of patriotism after decades of Republican skepticism. And what makes this absolutely explosive is how completely, shamelessly, cynically Starmer reversed everything he once believed. Not because his views changed, but because the electoral math did. By the end of this video, you'll understand why this moment wasn't about honoring the Queen. It was about Starmer's desperate attempt to win back voters who'd abandoned Labour for being too radical, too metropolitan, too disconnected from British tradition. And the evidence of his transformation from Republican activist to Royalist cheerleader reveals the most cynical political reinvention in modern British history. Let me show you exactly how dramatic this transformation was. Picture the scene. Liverpool, September 2022. Labour's first conference since Queen Elizabeth's death just weeks earlier. Starmer opened the conference in Liverpool under a banner bearing the Queen's image, with Union Jacks either side of the stage, and he praised her as this great country's greatest monarch. But it wasn't just the words. It was the entire staging. The stage consisted of a giant Union flag backdrop designed behind the podium, and above that, an enormous video banner spanning the width of the entire stage, with a photo of the Queen reading Queen Elizabeth II, 21 April 1926, September 8, 2022. This was symbolism on steroids. Every visual element screamed monarchy, patriotism, British tradition. This wasn't a political party conference. It was a royalist rally disguised as one. And then came the moment that shocked longtime Labour activists. Party delegates sang the national anthem at the start of the gathering for the first time in recent history. Think about that. For the first time ever, Labour, the party founded on socialist principles, the party of workers' rights and class struggle, the party that had always maintained skeptical distance from royal pageantry, was singing God Save the Queen at its conference. This wasn't evolution. This wasn't gradual change. This was revolutionary transformation orchestrated from the top down by a leader who understood one brutal truth. You cannot win elections in England if voters think you hate their country and their institutions. Starmer's full statement was even more effusive. Conference, the late Queen Elizabeth II was this great country's greatest monarch. She created a special personal relationship with all of us, a relationship based on service and devotion to our country. Even now, after the mourning period has passed, it still feels impossible to imagine a Britain without her. Read those words carefully. Greatest monarch, special personal relationship with all of us. Impossible to imagine a Britain without her. This is language usually reserved for devoted royalists, not from a party with deep Republican roots. But here's what makes Starmer's transformation so jarring. It betrays everything Labour was founded on. At its inception, Labour was opposed to all hereditary offices of state. The first Labour leader, Keir Hardie, was a lifelong Republican who scandalized Parliament with his anti-monarchist speeches. Keir Hardie, the man Starmer is reportedly named after, a lifelong Republican who spent his entire career arguing that monarchy was fundamentally incompatible with democracy and equality. Hardie didn't just quietly oppose the monarchy, he scandalized Parliament with his attacks on it. And now, a man carrying his name stands beneath giant Union Jacks and Queen portraits, praising monarchy as Britain's greatest institution. The irony is suffocating. Starmer's parents were both Labour Party supporters and reputedly named him after the party's first parliamentary leader, Keir Hardie. They named their son after a Republican firebrand, and that son grew up to become monarchy's most enthusiastic defender. But Starmer's personal transformation mirrors a larger betrayal. For over a century, Labour represented working-class skepticism of hereditary privilege. The party wasn't openly revolutionary about abolishing monarchy, but it maintained principled distance. Labour governments worked with monarchs as constitutional duty required, but never celebrated them like this. Until Starmer decided that electoral success required complete capitulation to Royalist sentiment. And here's the kicker. Britain's next prime minister is a human rights lawyer who once called for the British monarchy to be abolished, but years later knelt before Charles, then Prince of Wales, to be knighted. Let that sink in. He called for abolishing the monarchy. Then he knelt before a prince to receive a knighthood. Then he praised the Queen as greatest monarch. Then he became prime minister serving King Charles. This isn't political evolution. This is ideological prostitution. And we know his transformation was fake because we have the evidence. The video we discussed in the previous topic, where Starmer admits, "I often used to propose the abolition of the monarchy," was from 2005. But his public praise of the Queen came in September 2022 when she died. That means for 17 years, Starmer held Republican views, 17 years of believing monarchy should be abolished. And then the moment it became politically inconvenient, he completely reversed course. What changed? Not his beliefs. The polling data changed. Labour strategists looked at electoral maps and realized they couldn't win without working-class voters in England, and those voters overwhelmingly support the monarchy. So Starmer made a calculation: abandon principles, embrace flags and royalty, win elections. Starmer has become more supportive of the monarchy since entering politics in 2015, paying tribute to Queen Elizabeth II following the monarch's death in 2022. Since entering politics in 2015, that's the key phrase. Before politics, he was a Republican. After entering politics, he became a Royalist. Why? Because Republican lawyers don't become prime ministers in Britain. Royalist patriots do. But Starmer's Liverpool conference performance wasn't his first gushing royal tribute. Days after the Queen's death, he delivered a statement in the House of Commons that went even further. Today, our country, our people, this House are united in mourning. Queen Elizabeth II was this great country's greatest monarch. There it is again, greatest monarch. Not a great monarch, not an important monarch, the greatest. A superlative that leaves no room for historical figures like Elizabeth I, who defeated the Spanish Armada, or Victoria, who presided over the British Empire at its peak. Sir Keir Starmer paid tribute to Queen Elizabeth II after she passed away at the age of 96, describing her as the country's greatest monarch in his speech given to the Commons. But here's what's revealing. Starmer wasn't just mourning a national figure. He was auditioning for a role, the role of patriotic, respectful, traditional Labour leader. Every word was calculated to signal to voters, I'm not like Corbyn. I love Britain. I respect institutions. You can trust me with power. And it worked. Within 2 years, he was prime minister. But while Starmer was performing his royalist conversion from Middle England, his own party base was watching in horror. Socialist activists who'd spent decades fighting for equality, opposing hereditary privilege, and advocating for democratic reform saw their leader praising monarchy as Britain's greatest institution. They felt betrayed. Labour conference singing "God Save the King" represented the latest episode in Labour's transformation under Starmer. For left-wing Labour members, this wasn't evolution. It was surrender. The party that once stood for radical change had become the party of conservative preservation. Online forums lit up with anger. "This isn't the Labour Party I joined," wrote one longtime member. "Keir Hardie is rolling in his grave," wrote another. "We're not supposed to celebrate hereditary monarchy, we're supposed to challenge it." But Starmer didn't care,
because those activists don't determine elections. Working-class voters in Midlands and Northern constituencies do. And those voters love the Queen, love the monarchy, love the tradition. So Starmer gave them exactly what they wanted, a Labour leader who looked and sounded like a Royalist patriot. The activists could complain all they wanted. They had nowhere else to go.
But here's where Starmer's hypocrisy becomes even more blatant. While publicly praising monarchy, he was privately pursuing policies that would fundamentally restructure British constitutional power. Starmer tasked the former Labour Prime Minister Gordon Brown with recommending British constitutional reforms, whose report was published in 2022. Endorsed and promoted by Starmer, Brown's report recommended the abolition of the House of Lords. Think about that timing. Starmer was standing beneath Queen portraits, praising her as greatest monarch, while simultaneously endorsing a report calling for the abolition of the House of Lords, one of Britain's most ancient constitutional institutions. So he'll abolish the Lords, but praise the monarchy? He'll dismantle hereditary peers, but celebrate hereditary monarchy? The contradiction is staggering. Unless you understand that none of this is about principle, it's all about optics. The Lords are unpopular, so he'll abolish them. The monarchy is popular, so he'll praise it. His positions aren't based on constitutional philosophy, they're based on polling data. And this brings us back to the cruelest irony of all, his name, Keir. Named after Keir Hardie, the Republican firebrand, who spent his entire career fighting hereditary privilege. Every time someone says Prime Minister Keir Starmer, they invoke the legacy of a man who would have been horrified by everything Starmer represents. Keir Hardie scandalized Parliament with anti-monarchist speeches. Keir Starmer delivers gushing tributes, calling the Queen greatest monarch. Keir Hardie believed hereditary power was incompatible with democracy. Keir Starmer bows before King Charles. Keir Hardie represented working-class radicalism. Keir Starmer represents middle-class managerialism desperate for respectability. The name is the same, everything else is opposite.
So here's what that Liverpool conference moment really revealed. Keir Starmer will say anything, embrace any position, betray any principle if it helps him win elections. He was a Republican when that served his legal career and radical credentials. He became a Royalist when that served his electoral strategy. He proposed abolishing the monarchy when speaking to activists. He praised the Queen as greatest monarch when speaking to voters. The late Queen Elizabeth II was this great country's greatest monarch. Those words weren't a tribute. They were a transaction. Starmer traded his principles for power, his beliefs for votes, his integrity for office. And it worked. He's now Prime Minister, appointed by King Charles III, serving the institution he once wanted to abolish. The transformation is complete. The Republican lawyer has become the Royalist Prime Minister. The man named after Labour's first leader, a Republican firebrand, now leads Labour as its most enthusiastically Royalist leader in history. September 25th, 2022. Liverpool. A massive image of Queen Elizabeth, Union Jacks everywhere, Keir Starmer declaring her this great country's greatest monarch. And in that moment, the transformation was complete. The party founded on opposition to hereditary privilege was now celebrating it. The leader named after a Republican was now praising monarchy. The politician who once proposed abolishing the throne was now wrapping himself in its legitimacy. This wasn't mourning, this wasn't respect, this was opportunism disguised as patriotism. And millions of Britons fell for it. Starmer got exactly what he wanted: election victory, power, and the prime ministership. All it cost him was every principle he once claimed to hold. What do you think? Is Starmer's transformation genuine or the most cynical political reinvention in modern British history? Can you respect a leader who completely reverses his deepest beliefs for electoral advantage? Share your thoughts below, because this isn't just about one politician, it's about whether any of them actually believe anything beyond their own advancement. If this video exposed Starmer's fake royalist transformation, share it everywhere. The mainstream media celebrated his respectful tribute, but you now know the truth. It was all an act, performed beneath Union Jacks and Queen portraits by a man who once wanted to destroy everything he now claims to cherish. The Queen was many things, but she wasn't what Starmer called her that day. She was a prop in his cynical performance, and that might be the most disrespectful thing of all.